This is how to loom Eeyore part 1, and we're going to be starting with the head. You're going to need a 24 peg loom of any kind, just as long as it's 24 pegs. And here was my first time making him, and we're going to kind of use this as a guide. And you can see there's the hair. We're going to change that up a little bit, and the eye tutorial you can look up in the info section below this video. And the legs are all the same, and you can see the hump area in the back and the tail. These are all our parts, and you'll need 3 colors to start, 3 main colors, and then you can use some scrap white and black, but here are your 3. 1 skein of Bluebell, light raspberry, and cornmeal. And there's your 24 peg loom. You can use the boy 24 peg loom, or you can use the Martha Stewart. Martha Stewart 24 pegs will make it smaller. You want to use a scrap black so that you can add your hair and your eyebrows and mouth. And what we're going to do is we're going to start off with the cornmeal first, and then we're going to go to the Bluebell. And then when we start the ears, we'll start with the raspberry and then switch back to the blue. And so you're going to go from the snout area to the back of the head is how we're going to do this. So start with your cornmeal color, and so you don't have to get 2 skeins of something. You pull from the center and you pull from the outside, and those gives you 2 strands, and we're going to do 2 strands. We're also going to work on a technique, the double E-wrap. I was suggested to use it in a couple of comment areas. How would I go about doing my patterns in a double E-wrap so that you can stuff them firmer and not see the stuffing? This worked really well, so let me show you how to do the double E-wrap. Again, we'll be working from the front of the head to the back, and we will be doing the double E-wrap technique so that it can be stuffed firmly. So what you're going to do is we're going to start trying to set up that double E-wrap. So you're going to E-wrap 24 pegs, and we're going to be doing the head flat. So go ahead and E-wrap your 24 pegs, and you're going to stop and push the pegs down. And then you're going to work flat, and you're going to E-wrap back the way you came, 24 pegs. And press all those down. We're about ready to do our first row. And then you're going to E-wrap 24 pegs again, and we're about to complete our first row. So once you get done E-wrapping the 24 pegs, toss the bottom loop over the top 2, leaving 2 loops on the pegs. That's what you want to do all the way around. So toss the bottom loop over, and when you complete this, it will be row 1. This is called the double E-wrap technique. Shove all the loops down and E-wrap 24 pegs. And when you toss the loops over on this one, it'll be row 2. Toss your bottom loop over the top 2 loops. Do that all the way around and you'll have 2 rows. Shove all the loops down. You can undo your starting knot. So push all the loops down, and you're going to repeat this 4 more times for a total of 6 rows. Pause the video here to complete those rows so that you know where we're at when I move to the next section. After you've done your 6 rows, toss the bottom loop over to give you 1 loop on the peg, because we're fixing to change colors. And the reasoning for this is if you keep the double loop and you just add the blue, you're going to have 2 more rows of yellow, and we only want 1 more row of yellow showing. So we toss over and get down to 1 wrap around the peg, as you can see. Push your loops down, and we're going to change to our Bluebell yarn. So you want to cut you a tail on the cornmeal, and we're done with our cornmeal. Now we're going to change over to the blue, and you're going to use 2 strands. Pull from the center and the outside so you don't have to get 2 skeins, and that gives you 2 strands to work with. You want to tie the blue yarn around the tail on a half knot, and then you're going to tie it around again to complete the knot. This is all you need to do to add your new color. Now, from here, you want to E-wrap 24 pegs 2 times to get 3 rows of loops showing again. So this is the first row that you E-wrap, which gets you 2 loops on the pegs. And then E-wrap again all the way around, and this will get you 3, so that you can toss the yellow loops over the blue ones, and that'll be your first row of this section. So toss the yellow loop over the top 2. This will be your first row of this section, which is the upper part of the snout. Okay, now that we've done that, you're going to E-wrap 24 pegs, and you're going to repeat this 5 more times for a total of 6 rows, just like you did the first part. You're going to do it again, and you're going to toss the bottom loop over the top 2 loops, and you're going to do this a total of 6 times. This is row 2. So after this, complete your 6. So pause the video here to complete your row so that you can keep up with where we're at easily. Now that we've done that, we're going to toss all the loops over down to 1 loop on the peg. Reason being is we're fixing to do a partial internal decrease, and it makes it easier to do that, and You may think that it would actually open up holes where the snout is. It doesn't. You still can't see the polyfill once done when doing this technique and all that jazz. Okay, now that we've done that, we are going to decrease by 4 on each end. So we're to here. We've just done that section. We're going to do the decrease section, making it smaller right through there. So what we want to do is decrease by 4 on each end. So start with the end where you have the yarn that you're working with, and then you want to E-wrap it and toss both loops over. Do the same on the next one. This decreases 2. E-wrap, toss both loops over. This decreases 3 here, and toss both loops over when you E-wrap. And one more time on this side, decrease, E-wrap, and toss both loops over. To make it easier so that you don't have to count between your 4 decreases, you go to the other side, and you can see there's 4 decreased. And just to make it easier, I'm going to go ahead and bring these 4 together so that there is no space in between there. Again, this is a partial internal decrease. You only have to do this once. And because you E-wrapped it, you want to tighten up those loops. So go ahead and tighten them up so you don't have to remember to do that later. Again, so we don't have to count how many over. This is kind of the lazy way of doing it. Go to the other side. So go to the other side and repeat the same process, but you're not going to E-wrap. You're just going to move every other peg over. So we've decreased 1, we've decreased 2, we've decreased 3, and here's a 4th, and we've decreased 4. Now what we want to do at this point is we want to E-wrap all the pegs that have loops on them from here. So go ahead and now E-wrap 8, then E-wrap your decreased pegs. What you want to do is toss both those loops over your E-wrap. And I've apparently loosened this one up more than I like. I have 2 different blue looms that I work with. Hopefully yours hasn't gotten this loose. Mine has. So go ahead and toss all your loops over. And push down. And bring the decreased pegs together so they're all lined up side by side, which should only be moving 3 loops. So there's 1, 2, and 3. And you want to snug up those loops, so tighten them up so that there is definitely going to be no gaps, and you have a very distinct indentation where the snout comes in. So you've just decreased a total of 8 pegs, and this is what you should have left. Now you have a total. Make sure that you count and have the right amount. You're going to have a total of 16 pegs. Now you want to E-wrap those 16 pegs 2 times to get 3 loops back onto the loom to begin double E-wrapping again. So there's one E-wrap so that you have 2 pegs, and here's your second one to get 3 pegs, and now you're set up to start doing the double E-wrap again. Toss your bottom loop over the top 2 all the way around, and this is your first row of the face area. So this is the first row of the next section, just the face where the eyes typically go. And what you want to do is you want to repeat that last row 8 more times for a total of 9 rows. So you wrap 16 pegs for a total of 9 rows, and you want to do that 8 more times. And this is going to be row 2. And continue this, so pause the video to complete your rows. Now that we've done that, you see where that decrease is showing up. So next we're going to do our ears, and the ears kind of take a while. And here's where you're going to start changing your yarn color and doing that. So you're going to actually double E-wrap first 2 pegs as normal. So E-wrap the first 2. Then you're going to take the next 4 pegs to start working your ear. But go ahead and change to the light raspberry color so that you can create the pink part of the ear, because when you start the ear, you're starting the inside of it first. So go ahead and tie off a half knot and pull it down, and then snip your blue and tie again, and you've just changed your color. Now you're going to take the next 4 pegs, 1, 2, 3, 4, and you're going to take and get them down to 1 loop. So go ahead and toss the bottom loop over to get it down to 1 loop. The reason being is we don't want 2 more rows of blue, we only want 1. Now from here, you're going to go in and you're going to E-wrap those 4, push the loops down, and E-wrap 4 again, and now you're back to double E-wrapping. So go ahead and toss the blue loops over the pink loops, and this will be your first row. I'm going to go through this slowly because it is complicated. Go ahead and E-wrap those 4 pegs again. Again, my pegs are looser than I like. So toss that over, and that's row 2 for this ear. Then you're going to E-wrap another row, which is going to be row 3. We're going to be doing an increase. This is also where it gets complicated. You're going to wrap around the next peg, then E-wrap all over the 4, and E-wrap the next peg at the other end. This is an increase, but we're not ready to do a toss over yet. So go ahead, and this will be row 4. Push those down, wrap that peg again, and then E-wrap all the way across. And you're still not going to toss them over because we're getting to a double E-wrap on those. So this is row 5 for the center 4. Push all the pegs down. Now we've officially increased. So we're going to E-wrap those 6 pegs for a total of 10 rows. So this is going to be row 1. You are not going to touch that blue underneath the pink, because if you do, you connect the rest of the face with the middle of the ear. You don't want to do that. It's just being able to increase, but don't touch those blue loops underneath. So that was row 1. This is row 2. We're going to kind of move this a little faster. And this is row 3. And that's row 4. And this is row 5. This is row 6. And row 7. And row 8. And row 9. And row 10. Okay, from this point, we're going to switch and not do the increased ones. We're just going to do the middle 4 pegs for 3 rows. So here's 1. So we're shrinking down to have a tip. Like that. So that's 1. And then do the 4 again. That's 2. And this is 3. Now we're going to change colors back to the blue yarn to get the back side of the ear. So go ahead and snip in and half knot your blue yarn around the pink tail. Then complete a full knot. Now you're ready to start the back half of the ear. So go ahead and go ahead and toss the bottom loop over the top loop and get back down to 1 pink loop before starting to wrap your blue. And the reason being is we don't want 2 more pinks, we just want 1 more. Now we've got single rows, so go ahead and E-wrap the 4 middle because we're at the tip, and then E-wrap it again so we can get to the double E-wrap, and toss your pink row over the top 2 blue. Okay, and that's row 1 there, and this is row 2 going back up the ear. working just those 4 pegs. Okay, and you wrap row 3 and toss the bottom loops over, and say you've done your bottom 3. Okay, now we're going to increase. You wrap the 4 pegs and increase the end. Toss the bottom loop over, which makes row 4 of the 4 peg section. Okay, now we're fixing to have our 3 rows back on in the increased level. So wrap the increase again all the way back over, and then you want to E-wrap the 6 pegs for 10 rows. So this is row 1. Again, we're doing the fat part of the ear at this point, just the most of the ear. Apologize for going out of screen, but it's tossing the bottom lip over the top too. Okay, and as you can see, we're starting to create our ear. So go over and do that. This is row 2. Remember, do not touch those original 2. It can get confusing here, so make sure that you're only messing with the top 3. You don't want to connect the middle of your ear to your face. Okay, so there's row 3. Row 4. Row 5. Row 6. Row 7. Row 8. Row 9. And row 10. And from here we're going to want to go back down to the 4 pegs, so go ahead and toss over the 2 loops down to 1 on your increased. But on the middle 4, keep your 2 loops, because we're wanting to decrease, so toss your bottom 2 loops over on the increased ends down to 1. Now we want to move those increased pegs over 1 to where we're back down to our original 4 pegs. And there should be 3 loops on the outer pegs. So go ahead and E-wrap, and then you want to toss 2 loops over the top 2. So there's 1 and 2, leaving you with 2 loops on the peg. Then 1, 1, so 2 there, you can see, and then we're still 2 in the middle, and then you're going to do the same thing on the other decreased peg. Toss the bottom 2 loops over the top 2 loops to keep your 2 loop on the peg. We've now just decreased. Now we want to do E-wrap 4 pegs for 4 rows. So here's row 1. Here's row 2. row 3, and row 4. And you've basically just completed a ear, and this is where the ear stops. And as you can see, there is your ear. How it gets smaller and fatter at the middle and smaller at the end. And now what you want to do is continue e-wrapping around to, alright, you're going to do 2 more rows. Sorry, 2 more rows. So there's 5. And then 1 more row, which will make 6. The reason why I did these 2 more rows is so that there's extra to hang, so that they hang down easier rather than sticking straight up or out. This makes it easier for them to hang down. It adds extra. Let's go ahead and toss the bottom loops over. So now we want to go in and start working around to the other side. So E-wrap 4 pegs and then prepare to do the other ear using the next 4 pegs. The next 4 pegs, you're going to work your next ear. And so from here, you want to repeat just like you did on the first ear. And what you want to do is either pause the video and complete the ear, or go back to the beginning of the ear section of this video. And I will put in here the time zone in the video so that you can go back and repeat this ear. Naturally change up the color. I'll kind of get you started, but I'm going to let you go back to the beginning and finish it up of the ear section. Remember to toss down to 1 loop on those 4 pegs. And start E-wrapping. And remember, you want to keep with your double E-wrap. And toss the bottom loop over the top, so you know what section you're looking for. Again, I'll put the time frame of when to start, when I started the ear, so that you can repeat it just like you did the first one. Pause the video here to complete, and then E-wrap the last 2 to complete the row. You've now completed your row, and what you want to do now is to do the back of your head. And what you're wanting to do is you're going to E-wrap 16 pegs for a total of 6 rows. So this is row 1. And this will be row 2. Pause here to complete your rows. You need to do 5 more rows. Now that you've done that, it's time to finish off and get our head off of the loom. So you want to go in and get your pegs down to one loop. Pause the video here to complete. Now you want to decrease every other peg and toss the bottom loop over so you can prep for the drawstring cast off. Please pause the video to complete this. This is what it should look like. There's a total of 8 pegs left. Now you want to cut you a tail, a long tail, so you can string your needle and drawstring cast off all the pegs. And the reason why we did that decrease is because we don't want a whole lot of bulk around the back of the head. So go ahead and send the needle through all the pegs and do a drawstring cast off. Take your loops off the loom. Okay, then drawstring it together, close it off. Sew up the back of the head. And you're not going to go down very far to sew up the back of the head. Go ahead and tie off. And snip the end, and you'll be tucking that in. Now you want to tighten your cast on, so go to the opposite end where the tail is not and pull the loops that are your obvious cast on all the way across. You don't have to do this. You can just sew up the snout as is, but I always use the extra string to go ahead and sew up the snout and that kind of thing. Just go ahead and tighten your cast on. It's a little easier when you're not working circular to tighten the cast on. You just go to the opposite end where the tail isn't and start tightening it. And voila, now you've got a string to sew it up. So go ahead and tie off your ends. So that you can close it up, and what you're going to do is you're going to sew from the middle out, because your seam should be on the bottom half of the snout. So as you can see, I'm sewing from the middle out so that my seam stays on the bottom half of the snout. So go ahead and sew up the end of the snout. And then what I like to do is shove the needle back through to the beginning and sew up the other side. And so go ahead and sew up the other side. And then shove it back through the center where you started, and then tie off your end with the other strand of yellow. And then you want to sew up the rest of the snout, naturally leaving a hole where you can put stuffing and sew on the head to the body. And when sewing up the snout, you basically sew to where you decreased. The snout. So go ahead and finish sewing up the snout. Naturally sew the yellow section with yellow and the blue section with blue. Makes it a little bit of a pain, but you don't want that yellow yarn showing up where the blue is. Okay. Tie off and then add your blue and sew to the decreased section. And finish showing up your snout. We're almost done with the head, which is the hardest part of the whole pattern. And there you can see we're to the decreased section. We're going to want to tie it off there. So tie it off, and next you want to sew up your ears and stuff your head, which I won't show that. That's pretty much standard like all my other stuffed animals. Sew up your ears with blue and stuff your head full of polyfil, and that's it. That's the head. And you'll want to move on to part 2 to complete the legs, the body, the tail, the hair, and then to part 3 to assemble. So finish that and go to part 2.